I daydreamed my career as a musician into existence. I did. It's how manifestation works. When I was growing up in Qatar, there was no orchestra, there was no conservatory, there was no path for a girl who wanted to compose. So if I wanted to live it, I had to imagine it. And I imagined every single note, every sensation, every feeling. All these movies in my head about me being this internationally acclaimed, globally renowned composer. And when I closed my eyes, I could see it. I could see everything. I could see the standing ovation. I could see the grandeur of the stage. I can see the velocity of the sound. I can see the sea of musicians moving theatrically as one. To my music, of course, which I haven't written yet, but that's okay. Because in my imagination, everything was possible. It was accessible. So I stayed there all day, every day. Another avid daydreamer, Albert Einstein, once said that imagination is more important than knowledge, because with knowledge, you're limited to what you know already. Imagination creates what could be. So, innovation relies on imagination. That means we need to protect that magic. We need to protect that spark in an increasingly mechanized, rational world. I learned something that would change my life. Every first begins as an act of imagination. We all compose our reality and our stories, note by note, choice by choice. So that belief that imagination constructs reality became the rhythm of my life. Now, I remember the first time that I heard what imagination can do. I was around 9 years old, sitting in front of the TV in London. I was flipping through the channels, and I saw the orchestra for the first time. I saw an orchestra. I had no idea what I was looking at. I've never seen anything like it. I thought it was a band, this humongous band. I'm watching this unbelievable demonstration of music with what seemed like 1,000 musicians on stage and what looked like 1,000 instruments, each one seemingly doing something different. And it made sense. It was this incredible storm of sound. It was like watching color being born. In fact, Kandinsky actually once said that he saw his paintings forming in his head as he was watching a Wagner opera. I mean, yeah, you see Kandinsky's paintings, it makes sense. But this particular show was not Kandinsky, it was Mahler, which I pronounced at the time Mahler. So I wasn't sitting there thinking, wow, this is so beautiful. This is so melodic, obviously. But it was compelling. It was real. There was a familiarity around it. It was as if it was reaching into the innermost sphere of my existence. I would have heard Mahler unaware, Mahler-inspired music unaware through a lot of the movies I was watching, through Disney for sure. Out of the 25 best film scores listed by the American Institute of Film, over half of them were by Mahler-inspired composers. Even rock music, Pink Floyd, Blue Nile, Crimson Kings, they were all heavily influenced by Mahler. So the nature of Mahler's music is such that it transcends culture, it transcends ideology. And it managed to capture the full spectrum and complexity of the human emotion. And so on that particular day, it reached across the sea and it imprinted itself in me in a way that would change my life forever. So I'm sitting in front of the TV watching what I think is already a cosmic explosion. And then when I thought that that was the most that I was going to see, that was the highest that was going to be elevated, there was a choir. I mean, for goodness sake, there was 1,000 more people on stage. So there's this unbelievable energy and huge crescendo. All of a sudden, it's done. It's over. How am I going to access it? It's over. It's finished. Where do you find it? Where do you access this huge band orchestra? Desperately, I went to the music store and I went over to the man behind the counter and I said, "Do you have orchestra?" And I was like, "Well, which orchestra?" "How do you not know orchestra? The biggest band in the planet. There are like 1 million musicians in there." Okay. Bless him. He led me over to the orchestral section. I rummaged about. I did not find Mahler at the time, but I did go for the usual suspects and then built my way up. And that was it. I was hooked. I was hooked because the second I put those headphones on, I was transported back to that place. I was transported back to that vast, infinite realm of possibilities, to a world with no walls, no borders, no limits. And something else happened. When I was a child, I was very quiet, almost mute. No one would believe that, seeing me today. I had all these big ideas and big feelings, and I didn't have words big enough to hold them. So I preferred to say nothing, stay in my head, because it was the most real place. Until the musical dialect of Mahler provided the sonic underpinning for my emotional growth and expression. So you see, when I found music, I found language. I found my capacity to express. I found my voice. And after that, you could shut me up. Even worse if you give me a mic. Yet, when I told my family I wanted to be a composer, they implored me to see reason. They said, "But it's a hobby." I mean, they were right at the time. There was no industry, there was no jobs, there was no roadmap. And at the time, there was no social experience of a female performer, composer, musician. And so it was deemed inappropriate. So obviously, there had to be a first to enter into that sphere, to change the narrative, and shift the perspective associated with that role. So off I went, armed with nothing but pure conviction and a blank page. And sure enough, the narrative was shifted. Now it's completely normalized in a very short period of time. Now women can engage in any capacity they want in music, any capacity in the arts. But I realized when I stepped in, when I made the decision, when my imagination drove my choice, when I stepped in, I wasn't alone. I was actually backed by my state, by our leaders that have dedicated themselves to furthering arts and culture in my country, Qatar, that have committed themselves to unlocking human potential. So I thought of the other women before me in history. I thought of Clara Schumann. I thought of Fanny Mendelssohn. I thought of Mozart's sister, Anna Maria, who many would argue was the actual genius in the family. It's a very overachieving family. But, she was nearly forgotten. They were nearly forgotten because there wasn't a significant enough space carved for them in Western cultural history. Because it was also deemed inappropriate at that point for women to be performing. Anna Maria had that argument with her dad all the time. But it takes resilience, it takes decision making, and it takes a village, it takes a country. But your decision is what drives that. Every first begins as an act of imagination. So when did it happen for me? It happened when I was pregnant with my daughter. That limitless feeling came back. It was a period. We were entering an era in Qatar of unprecedented growth, where a limitless stream of possibilities lay ahead. So it was really an atmosphere of movement, of action, of change. And I wanted my daughter to experience the sound of progress, the sound of change, the sound of movement. I wanted her to hear what I sound like. So the only language that I speak better than anything else is music. I think in music. So I spoke to her in music. And when she was still in my stomach, I wrote my first orchestral piece, called it Layla, after her. And I wrote it as her lullaby to put her to sleep. It put me to sleep it helped. But it wasn't a career move. It was a calling. It was the calling. It was that moment where sound was solidified into matter, into concrete reality. And that was the moment that I pursued officially my career in music. Through motherhood, I became a composer. And this is the song that started it all, Layla. Thank you. It's a great bedtime piece. My own mother amplified my voice and showed me the limitless sounds of freedom when she took me to practically all the musicals in the West End and brought me a whole heap of encyclopedias with which I was enamored and expanded my imagination even further. This cycle came full circle when I decided to become a composer. Through composing, I grew into myself. I found purpose, I found meaning, not only with myself, but with my daughter, my community, and my place in the larger world. The Qatar Philharmonic Orchestra, which I'm proud to say I'm now the cultural ambassador of, was founded around 16 years ago by Her Highness Sheikh Hamoza bint Nasser Al Misnad. This was the most exciting thing that had ever happened to me. I mean, you can imagine this world that I've been living in as a child that I thought I invented. The greatest band in the world is now in my country. Of course, in that moment, without a higher education in music, without being an established musician in the scene, I did not have the courage to approach the director of the orchestra and ask him, may I collaborate? So I did not. I could not. With luck, though, a while later, after I had introduced my debut album, Paint, I was approached by the management of an accomplished pianist, Zaid Durrani, and I was offered the opportunity to open for him. Fantastic, because he was already collaborating with the Qatar Philharmonic Orchestra. They had a date, it made sense. Qatari composer, an aspiring Qatari composer, would open for him. In the end, he couldn't make it. The date was still available, the orchestra was available, and so the orchestra's management made the decision to give me that date, my first headline show. So I called it Layla, and of course I begun it with Layla. That period of time was marked by many women entering many new fields, from sports to academia to the arts, sciences, all thanks to the vision of Her Highness Sheikh Hamoza, who personally spearheaded that movement, led by example. Each of us was the first in something. Each of us had imagined a world that had not yet existed. Each of us became the change that we dreamt of. And finally, all of these worlds that I had invented, that I'd created, that I had lived in, all these big feelings, these big ideas, I was able to bring to life through my music. Through my debut album, Paint, which was more pop because it was more focused on the spoken word, I was able to write my memoirs. Through my next album, Sandstorm, which is when I reverted back to my classical origins, I was able to explore the more earth-centered components of my spirit. Through my album Indigo, I was able to combine color theory and sound frequency with a chamber orchestra to express a journey towards a higher state of consciousness. Through my album Tempest, I was able to root myself in the seafaring traditional music of my country, Fijiti, and weave that in to global seafaring cultural influences and stories. How cool is that? Based through my musical Broken Wings, based on the life of Gibran Khalil Gibran, I was able to immerse myself in one of the greatest minds of the 20th century. Through my next musical, Rumi, I was able to live in the esoteric, transcendental world of 13th century mystic and poet Jalaluddin Rumi. I was able to explore the universal harmony and sound. I was able to explore the universal human story, like I experienced it many years ago with Mahler when I was a child. I often look back and think back to that little girl sitting in front of the TV, completely transfixed with the sound, that she would one day have the opportunity to play a part in the musical history of her country. But that's how imagination works. It quietly composes, note by note, until reality catches up to its tempo. A world that did not exist came to life through sound. And that world became my reality. And a few weeks ago, I had the chance to speak to Mahler's granddaughter, who actually said, Dana, reality is limitless. Every first begins as an act of imagination. We all compose our reality. We all compose our stories, note by note, choice by choice. So what world would you compose into being? Thank you.